Hey everyone, we are still on Unit 4, Lesson 1, Surface Area of Rectangular Prisms. This time we're going to be looking at the homework. This will be a really good time for you to get out your homework, whoa, step 1 there, and follow along with me. I will do every single problem. Of course, I will put my name on it, just like you should too. Do not forget to do that. When we're looking at surface area, remember there are 3 pairs of congruent faces. So let's not forget that. I have my markers along with me so I can identify. Purple, the measurement to find the area, would be 3 multiplied by 2 because it has a width of 3 and a height of 2. I will grab my pink marker and color in the face that is 5 multiplied by 2. If you're starting to notice the pattern that each measurement is used twice. My blue will be the top, and that one I can find the area by multiplying 3 and 5. Do you notice there's 2 3s, 2 2s, and 2 5s? Each number measurement is used twice. So I multiply those. 3 multiplied by 2 is 3 multiplied by 2 is 6, yes. And then I multiply it by 2. I multiply the 6 by 2 because there are 2 of the faces with that measurement. I do the same thing to my pink. 2 times 10, and then 2 times 15. Now, if you forget to do that, your entire answer will be completely off. So make sure you do that. So it ends up being 12 plus 20 plus 30, which equals 62. And because we're looking at area, I square it. And my final answer is 62 inches squared. For number 2, I will not be using the different colors. Now this one is a square. It's a perfect square because each length is the same measurement. It's 6 by 6. So for each face, I know that it's 6 times 6. So I do that 3 times for each of my sides that are congruent. So 6 times 6, 6 times 6, and 6 times 6. That equals 36. I multiply 36 by 2, I get 72. So I add up 72 plus 72 plus 72 and get an answer of 216. My final answer is 216 meters squared. This one was difficult because they were all the same numbers and I was afraid I was going to mess up or forget one because they're all the same. For number 3, I will label these sides. Now, this one, if I color in the front, I'm just going to use my pencil, just like you would have on a test. I'm going to put an F. The F is for front. So this would be like the front face. My measurement for that, I would find by multiplying 8 and 10. Now that equals 80. Notice it has a height of 10, which it shares with the back, and it has a width of 8. The next side I'm going to color in, I'm going to write an S because that's the side. Remember, the F is the front, the S is the side. I find the area of that by multiplying 4 and 10 and getting 40. I'm going to color in the top, and it'll go just me coloring some sound effects. I'm going to write a T for top. So I used FST. The T to find the area would be multiplying 8 and 4. I do think sometimes it's handier to be able to visualize it with different colors, but I also like being able to color it in. So each of these must be multiplied by 2 because I have a pair to it because it's a net. So I multiply 8 by 2 and get 160. 80 by 2 and get 160, 40 by 2 and get 80, and 32 by 2 and get 64. I add those together and get 304. And my final answer with the correct identification would be 304 feet squared. It's nice to see different ways to do these, and you can find how you solve your own. Of course, getting the right answer. So for number 4, I color in my F, which is the front. It has a width of 4 inches, and it has a height of 3 inches. So it would be 3 times 4 equals 12. My side, S, I can find the area by multiplying 3 inches, which it shares with the front, by 5 inches and getting 15. The top, which is really, I mean, technically the bottom as well because of these congruent pairs, the top would be measured for area as 4 times 5, which equals 20. Now, each of these numbers, my answers, I would need to multiply by 2 because there are 2 identical ones for it. So 12 times 2 equals 24, 15 times 2 equals 30, 2 times 20 equals 40, a final answer of 94 inches squared. This time I'm going to write a different way how to do it. So I can multiply 9 times 3 and get 27. Noticing I'm putting it on there. 3 times 3 equals 9. And 3 times 9 equals 27. For that one equals, when I multiply by 2, 54. Same with the top. And my front would turn into 18. I take those numbers, add them together. So I'd have 54 plus 18 and get an answer of 126 centimeters squared. Do not forget to indicate that these are squared and what measurements you used. I'm going to break out my markers one more time for this one and color. So my front, it's purple. I would find the area by multiplying 3 and 2. That equals 6. The next color I'm going to use is pink. My pink will be the side of this prism. I would find the measurement by looking how long it is. It's 4 yards. And how tall it is, it's 2 yards. So I would have 4 times 2, which equals 8. Blue will be the top of this prism. Now, you're not always going to have these colors. Neither will I. I like to change my colors up. So it's good to be able to practice, okay, front, side, top, or writing the numbers on there. To find the area of the blue, I would multiply 3 and 4, get an answer of 12. Each of these numbers needs to be multiplied by 2 because they're both used twice. There's 2 identical squares or rectangles in these prisms. So 2 times 6 is 12, 8 times 2 is 16, and 2 times 12 is 24. When I add it up, I get 52 yards squared as the surface area of that prism. Now remember, I find the area of each side and I add them together. For number 7, all the faces of an antique candle box in the shape of a rectangular prism have been painted. The candle box has a length of 25 inches, a width of 10 inches, and a height of 8 inches. What is the total area that was painted? Hopefully, I remember to move this paper over so you can see it. But I always draw this out. That is actually one of the mathematical practices, is being able to solve problems different ways. And when I can color this and make a sketch, I feel like I can do this better. Now, there we go. Finally got the hint. To find my purple, which is my front, I would multiply 10 and you guessed it, 8. When I multiply that, I get 80. And if I multiply that by 2, I'd get 160 for the areas of both those of the congruent rectangles for purple. Pink is found by having the product of 25 and 8. Anytime I have 25, I always think of quarters. So if I had 8 quarters, I would have $2. So 25 times 8 equals 200. For blue, that's going to be the top, and I would find the measurement of the area by multiplying 10 and 25. I always think back to okay, I can use the math with me, and plus I know that 8 quarters would equal $2, so 25 times 8 equals 200. And if I added 2 more quarters, which would make it to the 10 quarters, I'd have 50. So my answer of 10 times 25 is 250. As I'm going along with these, I am multiplying them by 2 as my next step. So I have 160 plus 400 plus 500. Remember, that's for every single face of this prism. Sorry, sounds like I said prism. If I add those together, I get a total of 1,060 inches squared. See how important it is to not just do this in your head? Like I can't just look at it and go, oh yeah, that totally looks like 1060 inches squared. I have to write my work down and show it. Kara made a sewing box in the shape of a rectangular prism. Its length is 14 inches, its width is 8 inches, and its height is 6 inches. Kara plans to cover the box with fabric. The fabric comes in 14-inch squares. How many squares does she need to cover the faces with no overlap? So I'm going to draw it over to the side so I can visualize it. And I know that if I'm looking at these squares and like how many will cover it, I'm going to be dividing. So to get my final answer, I will have to divide. When I label my square, it has a length of 14, which I labeled, a width of 8, and a height of 6. So pink, which is the front, in this case, I would find it by multiplying 6 times 8, which equals 48. I multiply that by 2 because of the congruent faces and get 96. Purple, I'll cover, which is now the side. I would find the area of by multiplying 6 and 14. That equals 84. I multiply by 2 and get 168. It is imperative, so like super important that you take your time when doing these problems. You don't want to be, like just one off. We found that when we were in unit 2 as well. It was very, very helpful to take your time. Blue will be the top, and I know in my drawing you can't really see it, but I'm still going to put a little splash on there so I know that it's been used and measured. Blue, I'd find the area by multiplying 8 and 14, which is 112. I would multiply that by 2, and I would get 224. My final step for this part of it is to add them all together, and I would get 488 inches squared as my final answer for the area of the surface area of this prism. But that's not my final answer for the question. They're also asking me how many squares of this fabric that's 14 by 14 will Kara need to cover the faces with no overlapping. Now I'm going to warn you, this is where my division kind of went off its rocker. But I, in the end, had to use some rules of division in order to figure it out. So because this is it says 14-inch squares, I know that the area of it is 14 by 14. Kara is essentially making a net for this sewing box. She's wrapping it. So to find the area of those squares, remember 14-inch squares, I multiply 14 times 14. I get 196. This number, because I'm taking the area of those squares, I will divide, it is my divisor, in the problem 488 divided by 196. I'm using division because it's asking, basically how many groups, how many squares. I could use subtraction, that would take me longer, which really is division. So I know 196 is almost 200. 200 would go into 488 twice. I multiply that out and I get 488 minus 392. I will have to put a decimal point for myself to continue this. When I put it there, remember to put your decimal above as well. That can really, as we saw in the last chapter, really make your answer kind of wonky. I end up having 96 as a remainder, bringing down the 0, get 960. My original thought is, oh, hey, 5, because this is almost 200. 5, 200 can go into 1,005. The biggest problem I did was rounding both of those. So when I do the 5, and you'll see when I multiply it out, I actually go over by about 20. The beauty of being a mathematician on a mission is that even though I know I'm over by 20, if I would have done 4, I would have been in the clear. But when they're asking of these how many squares, I can't say, well, Kara's going to need about, between 2.4 and 2.5. No, car is going to need 3 if we're looking at total squares. So even though